Hello and welcome back to MedPoint Healthcare Center's Stop Waiting program. The webinar for this week will be all about meal planning. To follow along in your workbook, turn to page blank. So a little overview of our presentation today. We'll be talking about what meal planning is, some key resources and tools that you'll need, the different ways that you can meal plan, and some encouragement to get you started. So before we begin launching into this presentation, I want you to take some time to reflect. Have you meal prepped before? What comes to mind when you think of meal prepping? Jot down these ideas in your workbook. So what is meal planning? Well, it's essentially a form of organization where you're planning ahead what kind of meals you'll eat during the week, recipes you'll use, and you take steps towards having the tools and buying the ingredients you'll need so that you'll be prepared. Meal planning can also include how you'll complete your meal prep, or the actual chopping and cooking of your food. There's lots of benefits of meal planning as well, including you'll spend less time in the kitchen, save money, and reduce food waste. You'll likely eat healthier cooking for yourself, and it's an opportunity to introduce more variety in your diet. You won't be eating pasta every single night because you'll plan ahead to include maybe some different starches, different vegetables, different protein sources. And this is one of the most important reasons that I recommend people to meal prep, because oftentimes we may think or associate healthy eating with less flavor or it's boring, but if we properly meal plan to include a lot of variety and different flavors and different textures of those healthy foods, we can make healthy eating a lot more exciting. Some tools that you'll need. I recommend doing a quick inventory of the different kinds of containers that you have. If you need to pick up some more small ones, leak-proof ones, Ziploc, different things like this, make sure that you do so. I recommend thinking about purchasing a chest freezer. This can really help increase the amount of extra meals that you can freeze for times where you need those on hand. You can freeze stock. You can buy extra vegetables and meats when they are on sale, so a freezer can really be extremely handy. I also want you to make sure that you have your pantry staples guide on hand, because keeping those key items, those versatile ingredients that you may use over and over again on hand, can really help save you trips to the store and help you throw together a healthy meal when you're in a pinch. So that resource should be available to you in your workbook. And I also recommend that as you come across recipes which look good to you, try printing them out and keeping them on a clipboard on your fridge, or whether you use the electronic method of maybe saving as a file or creating an account where you can save them. Just keep and compile a list of go-to recipes so that you're never in that situation where you're wondering what's for dinner. And finally, I suggest that you have a visual calendar or some sort of visual planning sheet on your fridge or in your cupboard, somewhere very obvious, where you can track and you can write down exactly what you will be making during those weekdays or weekends, and any other details you may need. As for some great resources, I do have some websites and cookbooks that I can recommend to you very quickly. My favorites websites include Pinterest and Food Gawker for generating recipes. The great thing about both of these platforms is that you can create accounts and you can save those recipes or keep them on hand. The nice thing about Food Gawker is if you have either a picky eater at home or maybe some food allergies, they have a really excellent search bar where you can insert keywords or key ingredients that you would want to include in your recipes, or keywords or key food items that you want to avoid in your recipes. And then for cookbooks, MedPoint does have a cookbook. You can purchase either a hard copy or we have an electronic PDF available. Some of my other favorites include the Yum and Yummer or the Podleski sister cookbooks. Never been disappointed by any of those recipes. And the Oshi Glows is a great one for people who are looking to eat more plant-based. So the ways to meal prep or meal plan. There are 4 key big picture different ways that you can meal plan: batch cook and freeze, batch chop for the week, plan and tag team, or healthy meal exchange groups. So the first one, batch cooking. This is probably the most commonly associated strategy when we think of meal prepping. Batch cooking is where you might double the recipe and you plan on consuming some of that during the week, but you intentionally freeze extra portions of it in your freezer for later dates, for those emergency meals. And so what's a really important factor in the batch cooking is you want to make sure you have enough food containers which are freezer safe. And I recommend using small or medium flat containers rather than large tall ones. Now this is for ease of defrosting. It doesn't take as long to take your leftovers out of the freezer into the fridge, but it's also better for food safety, as the smaller the container is, the easier it's going to come down in temperature, reducing your risk for any kind of foodborne illness. The second strategy is just batch chopping. So instead of cooking your ingredients all the way through, you would take a peek at all the recipes that you plan on making for the week and look at those ingredients, specifically the vegetables. You're going to chop all of your raw ingredients ahead of time. Maybe this would also include marinating your meats or soaking your legumes, whatever you need to do. Essentially, you're getting yourself ready up into that cooking point. So each day of the week, you'll still be cooking your meals and your dinners from fresh, but this will quicken the assembly and the cooking process. It'll shorten the duration of your time spent in the kitchen, and you'll have less cleanup each day. The third example is the plan and tag team. Now, it's important to say that this method is designed for 2 people to be prepping together, but if you're just cooking for one, this is certainly perfectly fine for you to do on your own as well. This method might be best for someone who doesn't want to give up any of their time on the weekend and they're happy to cook from scratch every single evening, if we're talking about dinner in particular here. The strategy that you would use for the plan and tag team method is you want to make sure you have a visual planner on your fridge. It's still really key to choose which recipes you're going to be having during the week and making sure you have purchased all of those ingredients ahead of time. So the first person who gets home will start the prep, and they'll take a look at your visual planner, see which meal you're going to be making, and they begin. Then once the second person comes home, they finish up the meal. And as a simplified alternative, you would just take turns with that other person cooking for the night. So maybe Monday, Wednesday, Friday is person A, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday is person B. So this is great because it helps to divide the amount of work each person has. So the fourth option is the healthy meal exchange. So you've perhaps heard of cookie exchanges before around the holiday season. Well, instead of cookies, we're exchanging healthy meals. So the first step in this strategy is to gather a group of 3 or 4 close friends who all want to be on the same page and make healthy meals. Discuss food likes and dislikes together and agree on 1 or 2 recipes per person. And before you begin cooking, I encourage every member to make sure they have enough food containers because you're going to be splitting up the portions of food you're all making. I suggest tripling or even quadrupling the original recipe and portioning those meals out into 3 or 4 containers so that everybody can swap. This is a great way to get a variety of different healthy meals in and reduce the amount of time you're spending in the kitchen. And as an important sideline from this, to tell if your meals that you're creating are healthy and balanced, use the healthy plate model visual you can see here. This is also shared with you in your workbook. Half of your plate should be filled with vegetables, a quarter with your carbohydrates or starches, preferably high fiber versions, and then the remaining quarter of your plate with your protein source. So time to get started and to reflect. What will you accomplish today to get you moving in the direction of meal planning? Which model of meal planning would suit your lifestyle best? It can be easy to sometimes fall out of the routine of meal planning, but whenever you notice this happens, ask yourself the question, what can I do today to get back on track? Even if that means printing out some recipes you want to make, making a list and planning when you'll go to the grocery store, or maybe even just starting some chopping of your raw ingredients to get yourself ready for the rest of the week. Something is better than nothing. So to summarize our presentation this week, meal planning is simply organization of recipes and methods of food prep. There are many, many benefits of meal planning as we discussed, and there are lots of different ways to meal prep. So don't put pressure on yourself to plan all 3 meals for the next 7 days. If it makes sense to just focus on one, begin with that. And the best way to get started is just to ask yourself, what can I accomplish today? So thank you very much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful week.